Let's bring you to one of our top stories this Tuesday as the ANC prepares for a reset in the Government of National Unity. It will now, over the next 5 days, engage with parties both in and outside of the coalition. The party says it's open to talks with all parties represented in Parliament as a reconfiguration of the GNU is on the cards. But what options are on the table and what could happen? Well, joining us in studio is Newzroom Afrika's Qaanitah. Qaanitah, good afternoon. It's great to have you here. And there are a lot of moving parts to the story, right? Particularly with the adoption of the fiscal framework last week and everything that entailed, everything that built up to that moment. Shall we begin with the parties in the GNU, the composition of Parliament and the parties that are not part of that coalition?
To understand where we are now, Michelle, we have to go to the beginning to understand how this multi-party coalition was structured. It was the ANC initially that had first suggested a confidence and supply arrangement. And what would have that been? That the ANC will rule by minority government and they would ask party for support. It was parties like the Democratic Alliance that pushed forward the need for a coalition government. They obviously insisting on what they wanted to be a grand coalition, ANC plus DA running the country. But it was President Cyril Ramaphosa that insisted to include 10 parties. This was the ANC, the DA, the Patriotic Alliance, Qaanitah Freedom Party, Good Party, PAC, Freedom Front Plus, UDM, Al Jamaa and Rise Mzansi. So that was what came from after intense negotiations between these political parties 9 months ago. These parties accepted a role in the GNU in exchange for different positions. Some got ministerial positions, some got chairpersons of portfolio committees. But together these parties represent something like 70% of Parliament, right? So a big block of Parliament is these parties in the GNU, which means that there should not be any parliamentary process that would be under threat because the GNU has this really solid majority in cabinet. Now, we know that there have been parties that have not been in the GNU. And those parties, obviously, they are opposed to the GNU, and they kind of divided into two parts. Those who are formed under the Progressive Caucus, if you like, that's the EFF, the MK Party, the ATM, the National Coloured Congress, as well as the United African Transformation. So those parties. Then you had parties what we call in the middle parties, ACDP, Action SA and BOSA. And those are the parties that the ANC is now looking to have conversations with.
Yeah, the margin, pardon me, was very thin that the ANC had to adopt the fiscal framework in Parliament last week. Many would say that Action SA actually delivered the budget framework to the ANC with its 6 seats in Parliament. Talk to us about that thin margin, Qaanitah.
So like I said, that 70% of the GNU with the DA and Freedom Front Plus takes the GNU to 286 seats in Parliament. That's quite a bit. And if everything was going fine, the budget would have passed completely without any issues. But now we know the DA, with its 86 seats, pulled out of the budget process, and then the Freedom Front Plus as well pulled out. So the party needed to get over the line to get that majority. It relied on the 6 seats from Action SA, as well as the 2 votes from BOSA to get it to that very thin majority, as the ANC opened negotiations to all parties, also going to the EFF, going to the MK Party, say, vote with us to get this budget passed. Obviously, it was the main decision of the Freedom Front Plus and the Democratic Alliance to stay away. Now, the DA and the Freedom Front refusal to vote with the budget has become the source of contention because you are part of this Government of National Unity, as the ANC has said, but the budget that effectively sets into motion a government, they oppose to it. So now what happens? The ANC is sticking to its guns on this, Michelle, saying that if you do not support a budget, you are not part of that government. And the DA is saying, no, we are part of the government, but we disagree with the budget. And so there must be renewed negotiations. Now, it's a classical case of you divorce me, first. Who divorces who first in a tense polygamous marriage, if you like. But the reality of it is that now, with the ANC opening up conversations with other political parties, there are different scenarios on the table, Michelle.
Right. And when we talk about that thin margin, it is very thin, right? It's 194 to 182 votes that got the budget framework passed in Parliament. And, what was it that Deputy President Paul Mashatile had to say yesterday? He said he would have been ashamed to be a DA minister going to work yesterday when they voted against the budget framework, because how do you work as a minister when you didn't adopt the budget?
And that's the bone of contention. Yeah. The DA says they'll continue being in the GNU, and they've stated numerous times that they want the ANC to decide whether they kick them out or not, and that was a big part of
the ANC has literally said the same thing.
Absolutely.
The DA needs to go and reflect, but for now they are within the GNU.
And both parties in the internal conversations yesterday, there was 2 meetings happening parallel of the DA and of the ANC, where there's unhappiness with how each party has, participated in the GNU. Now, with the ANC's decision to say, we're not going to kick them out, but we are going to start a fresh round of conversations 9 months after the last round produced this GNU as we saw it. Now, what are the scenarios?
Right.
Scenario 1 is the ANC puts a hard line in the sand and says, if you do not support the budget, you are not allowed to be part of the Government of National Unity. And the DA maintains that they are not willing to support the budget. And that means that if that line is taken with both the DA and with the Freedom Front Plus, the ANC, the Government of National Unity, the majority declines to 194 seats. Mm-hmm. So it's very important what the Freedom Front Plus does, because probably the same action won't be taken for both of those parties. Scenario 2 is the ANC now needs to say it needs a majority in Parliament. With the absence of the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Front Plus, who do we go to? We go to Action SA, they helped us support the budget. We then also go to BOSA. They would obviously have to then make some offers with regards to what their participation in the formal Government of National Unity will look like. That takes them only to 202 seats. Still a very, very tricky situation. Yeah. That's 10 parties in the Government of National Unity, of which 9 of those parties have less than 5 or 6%. Mm-hmm. And so that's really, really tricky to maintain a party. And that's what the DA has cautioned against, to say, you are going to have this huge multi-party coalition where all parties have such a tiny stake and they can topple the government.
More voices. And is that a good thing? I'm not sure anymore.
Well, I mean, we still have 10 parties in the current iteration of the GNU. So it's a matter of whether you want these big anchor clients, the ANC and the DA, right, and then the small parties, or whether the ANC can risk it with just having 9 other smaller political parties.
Scenario 3 is interesting. How possible is this one?
So the ANC has been quite open to conversations with the with the EFF, and the Deputy President Paul Mashatile conceding that last week they spoke to the EFF and said, vote for us and we can have a conversation. The EFF has made it clear there's no participation in the GNU if the DA is there, mm-hmm, and if Freedom Front Plus is there. But this new budget reality has given some within the ANC, hope that this could come with a renewed reset, like Fikile Mbalula said, on the GNU. Now, the question is going to be, what are the demands of the EFF? And consider that against the demands of the DA. And that will have to be the consideration that the ANC top brass have to make when they regroup after the 5 days of consultation.
But the EFF also voted against the budget.
Exactly. And so they would also make a set of demands on the ANC, which is why some in the ANC leadership are saying that that cannot be an option and that their preferred choice would be these kind of smaller political parties coming into the fold. The other option the ANC has is to say, well, we spoke to everyone, we can't get over the line, and we will govern through a minority government. And every time we need to vote, we'll make deals like the deals that we saw last week in Parliament with the Action SA, where they were not part of the formal government, but they sort of lent their support to the ANC. We see that happening in Gauteng. It's not the most ideal scenario, but the ANC, as we know, it says that would be the last resort if they don't make a deal in the next 5 days.
In the next 5 days, did I also hear a 2-week deadline, a 2-week report back deadline in that briefing by Fikile Mbalula?
Yeah, so the 5 days is the conversation with the political parties. The ANC will then, it will be a long process of back and forth. Remember, we have some experience of this as a country when we watched it unfold in June 2024, where political parties made all sorts of demands, and there were many back and forth conversations until that 11th hour when the president had to be voted in Parliament, and that statement of intent was signed literally with seconds to spare. And so we've not seen an efficient process, but I do think that beyond the configuration of the parties in the GNU, there will have to be a reconfiguration of the rules of engagement. That is absolutely important, because all parties have realized that the way that they have been negotiating, the way that they have been talking to each other has been problematic on so many scores. And so the ANC too will present their demands to a party like the Democratic Alliance, where the ANC says the DA has been arrogant in their negotiations, and then the DA on the other side says the ANC has been negotiating in bad faith. So whether we're going to see a complete reset of the GNU as we know it, as per the scenarios that we painted out, or a reset in the rules of engagement, but there will definitely be a change in temperature.
Fascinating times. Qaanitah Hunter, thanks very much for plotting all of that out for us. Very interesting to take a look at those various scenarios now as those 5 days of conversations take place between political parties. What will this government of national unity look like in the end? Time will tell. Just a note, Vuyo Mvoko, our colleague, will be in conversation with DA leader John Steenhuisen at the top of the next hour. He is in Cape Town for us, so stay tuned for that.